Today on TwinCam, at long last, we are finally going to be making Little Melody look somewhat acceptable. So obviously the most major thing about this car is the fact that it's filthy because I've been driving it, so the car needs a seriously good clean, and I've had this car for quite a while now and I've still not polished it once or really paid any attention to the way it looks. So today is the day that changes because there are car shows coming up and I don't want the car looking like it does at shows. So the first thing we're going to do is actually not to clean the car, but instead, you may have noticed, and I mentioned this in my initial introduction to Melody, that some of the trim is black, like the bumpers and the grille, and some of it is grey, like the rubbing strips and the mirror on that side and the door handles. So all the trim on this car should be grey. It was grey from the factory, but at some point in its life, it's had the bumper, the grille, and that door mirror sprayed black. Now I actually prefer the way black looks, but I don't like the way a 50-50 combination of grey and black does look. So we're actually going to take off the rubbing strips and we're going to take off the roof gutter trims as well, because I think that once I do eventually spray the bumper and the grille in a new coat of black, I think the car will look a bit cleaner without the rubbing strips on the side. So it's probably going to be heresy for a lot of people, but I'm going to make this car not original. Shock horror. Well, it's the 2nd of June today and the sun finally seems to have come out, and it's quite early in the morning, so if I'm squinting at the camera because the sun is right there, then I apologise. But you may have also noticed that this strip here in front of the side repeater on the other side of the car has already come off. It was coming off anyway, and when I was driving down the motorway, I stopped at a petrol station and it had curled itself round because obviously the wind had managed to get into it and pushed it, so I pulled the rest of it off. But I think these should be able to actually just kind of pull off the car. I don't think the glue is going to be that strong on them. And yeah, there you go. It is just coming off. So I'm going to be careful to make sure that we're not harming the paintwork. But also it doesn't look too badly faded, the general paintwork. So I shouldn't be leaving a big stripe down the side of the car by doing this. So there you go. There is the first properly fitted rubbing strip off the car. Now the reason I want to do this is, first of all, it makes the car look a bit cleaner because of course I've got these MG Metro style graphics down the car, and though they're not very well fitted, they look cool. And I think the car will work without the rubbing strip, and just with those it won't look too plain on the side. Also, the A-Series Metros have this cool little shape down in the front wing here. So there's a clear lip down the side of the car here, and then just a little kind of ding in the panel here, which is just where the rubbing strip sits. And at the front you've got this swooping down line, which I really like, and I think it looks great. But the rubbing strip hides it. The rubbing strip, you know, it means that you can't really see it. So I am going to keep these rubbing strips, but they'll be coming off, and I think the car will be all the better for it. So I'll go around the car and do the rest of them, and then we'll come back and we'll tackle trying to get all this adhesive and stuff off the side of the car. Both front wings on this car have been replaced, and that's made blindingly obvious when we take the trim off, because on the wing it came off very nicely, not too much residue. But as we move on to the doors, yeah. At this point I was not looking forward to getting this adhesive off. The roof trims are coming off for one of the same reasons as the side trims are, because I think the car will look much cleaner. Under here there's a bit of peeling paint and the other side strip just snapped, but under the door trims the paint is perfect. Before attacking the residue, I thought I'd hop over to the glass because poor Melody is peppered with stickers, the headline act of which is the backflash. I know a lot of you liked it and I grew to tolerate it, but it has to go. Not only does it look a bit cliched, I wish it was still the 80s, but it's also been damaged in the corner of the M. With all the stickers off, I cleaned the residue as best I could with some tar remover. With it all done, the rear window looks so much better. Just the Owners Club and dealer stickers remain, and I'll probably have a reproduction dealer sticker made up at some point because this one isn't in the finest fettle, And whose idea was it to put a smiley face on a dealer sticker? The Union flag on the front screen's gone as well. The more observant among you may notice that I'm now wearing different clothes, and that's because we're about 4 days later because, oh my god, those crows are noisy. But now we're about 4 days later because that became one of the most unnecessarily time-consuming jobs I've ever done. I don't understand why it took me so long to do, but once the rubber strips were off, the adhesive was just immovable. It took me a full day, more than a full day, despite using a well-respected adhesive remover as well. So I just don't know what was going on there, but I've managed to get them off. There is a slight, dirt line of where they were, obviously, but that should come off later in this video when we clean the car, clay it, compound, polish, all that kind of stuff. The only place where it hasn't come off correctly is on this driver's side front wing, and that's because clearly the car's had a new wing on it at some stage, as to be fair all Metros have, but whoever put the rubber strip back on decided to use super glue, which is gorgeous. So yeah, that's still there, so that will eventually come off. I'll keep working at it, but while we compound and polish today, we'll just be very careful with it. So onto the cleaning. This little car hadn't been cleaned for over a month before this. It was grim, but from now on I can assure you that she'll be much better kept. After this effort in making her look presentable, it was stupid for me not to. So with all my usual rigmarole in trying not to scratch the paint even more than it already is, I just let it air dry. No need to expend energy and avoid watermarks because of what we'll be doing next. So our first step in the detailing is to clay the car. And now this is something that I think a lot of people don't know about and don't do for some reason. So if you're serious about wanting your car to look nice and you drive it enough to actually need to clean it all the time, then the likelihood is you're going to need to clay the car, because when you clean a car, as you all know, you don't get the car completely clean. You get it a lot cleaner, but there's always contaminants left in the paintwork here and there. And when you're polishing, you want to be polishing, not cleaning. If you end up cleaning bits off the car while you're polishing, that's bad news for the quality of the paint. So clay is a good way of really cleaning up the paint. And even if you think your car is spotlessly clean, if you've never gone over it with a clay bar before, do it. You'll be shocked at how much stuff is left on the clay once you're done. So this is a new clay set from Meguiar's, and so you get 2 individual clay bars in the box, and they just come in little plastic wrapping like that, and it is literally just clay. And all you're doing with the clay is rubbing it over the paintwork, and it pulls up all the contaminants that are still left in there. So obviously you want a lubricant of some kind, so I have some Rapid Detailer Autoglim stuff, and a microfiber cloth somewhere. So I shall probably do a time lapse or something, and we shall clay the car. I cannot overstate how much better a bar of clay leaves the paintwork. It's such a simple and easy step, I just don't know why you wouldn't. In fact, it's ended up taking out a number of marks that I thought were in the paint itself. So with the car as clean as we're going to get it, we can move on to the exciting bit, which is compounding and polishing. Now, a few months ago, it will have been March actually, I made a video where I DA'd Melvin, where I compounded and then polished. And that was the first time I'd ever done this, so I had a newly bought DA and I went to town on the car. But the paintwork of Melvin was already pretty good. And yes, it made an improvement, it made the car much better looking, but it wasn't a huge improvement because the paint was already quite good. This car, hopefully, will be a different story because the paint is fine. The paint is, well, in a number of places is perfectly okay, but it's just very flat. It just needs compounding and polishing to bring up some kind of gloss finish to it. So I have Meguiar's Ultimate Compound, which is good stuff, and this is what I used again on Melvin. Nice work, Ed. I have the DA, and I have, this time, a much stiffer polishing pad. So this is for actual compounding. Didn't want to go this harsh on Melvin because the paint again was already quite good and I was a bit scared, but now I'm willing to take a few more risks, so this is a harsher pad. Now, This is a Halford's DA, it's Halford's own DA, and while the polisher itself gets good reviews, the pads that are supplied with it get dreadful reviews. Apparently these are just eaten up immediately, and it came with 3 different pads. This one, a middle kind of cut one, and this much softer one. The middle one, which I used on Melvin, just completely ate itself up, was destroyed. This one, the backing is starting to come up a little bit on it, but this one is unused. So I'm going to use this one, but I'm not expecting it to last the entire car. So I have some 3M compounding pads, which are apparently the best to use. I've had them recommended to me by a number of people, so these are these big green ones. So hopefully this kind of red pad will last the course, but I'm not expecting it to. So I have the 3M pads just in case they don't. So I think I shall put this on and we will start round at the front of the car on the bonnet. I ended up taking the car into the garage because it was just too hot outdoors. The sun was out and the paintwork was roasting. I didn't think it was a good idea to polish in those conditions, so here we are the following day, indoors, with some compound and that red pad I mentioned. After spreading the compound manually, I'm turning the DA onto a low setting to rub it into the paint, then switching to a higher speed to start the cutting process. It was in the process of this that the red pad met its expected fate and was relegated to being thrown on the floor in disgust. With a fresh microfiber, I buffed off the remaining compound, and even with one quick pass, it's been transformed. The same applies for the roof and the rest of the car. Then of course I went round the edges by hand, and even here, just look at the difference. This is looking ace. I'm so happy with the way this is turning out. I mean, I'm going to sound like a broken record here, but it's only going to be as good as the paint will allow it to get. It's still going to be full of marks, full of really deep scratches and all that kind of stuff, because that's just what the paint is. There's a point where it can't be saved, but God, it looks so much better and it's so much smoother than it was. It was so badly oxidised before I started, so I'm very happy to see it starting to come back to life. So, now the compounding is done, we need to do some polishing, and now I've ended up buying this Maguire's pad, which is a bit too big. It was advertised as being smaller, so yeah, I don't quite understand why it's so big, but I'll live with it and just be careful with it. So I've got this Maguire's pad, but we're stopping using Maguire's products because I'm just using what I've got in, and what I've got in is Autoglym Super Resin Polish. Now, I've used this stuff for years, and a lot of people seem to not like it, and I don't quite get why, but it's good stuff. So I'm using this to polish, and there's nothing more to say. Let's just get to work. There's nothing much more to see with the polishing. It just looks the same as the compounding. But I wonder if you can see the shine now beginning to show back up in the paint. We won't know the effect for sure though until we get it outside. Doesn't it look brilliant? Oh, I'm so pleased with how this has turned out. The paint was so incredibly oxidised before that it looked as though there was a film over the entire car. It's like someone had wrapped the entire car in cling film. It just looks rubbish, but now there's so much life in the colour. I mean, I always thought that Flame Red was by far and away the best Austin Rover red, or proper red at least, definitely of this era, which is a later one, the colour that replaced Targa Red, which is this car, but it's so much deeper than I thought it was. Oh, it's so cool, and it's so much more red than I thought it was as well. I thought it was a dull red. It was meant to be a dull red because most of the Targa Red cars I've seen have been quite dull, but this, it's the best. It's so cool. So hopefully going across the screen now will be a few, pictures of it actually close up so you can see what it looks like. But oh, it's just so good. It's so good. You could dive into it. I'm going to guess the reason that a lot of Targa Red cars don't look perfect is because people fail to wax them and then they oxidise. Because this is a single stage paint, hence all the all the red on the compounding and polishing pads I've been using. So you physically take off the paint when you compound and polish, and over time it oxidizes and then goes horrible again. So you need to really keep on top of the waxing of these to keep the paint protected to stop it from oxidizing again. So that's what I'm going to do once we've finished here today, because you can't really, with waxing, you can't see a difference. So I thought there's no point doing it on video. I'll do that off camera on my own. Less stressful that way. So, but yeah, as it stands, this car looks absolutely ace. I'm so happy with it. The car, as I said a million times, I've sounded like a complete broken record. The car isn't perfect. The scratch is still everywhere. The stone chips everywhere. There are little bits of rust creeping through into the paint here and here, and loads on the roof and all that kind of stuff. And obviously there's the rust around the rear end of the car, but it just looks so good. So before we go, we're going to do one more thing. We're going to make this car look as good as it possibly can as it stands, by getting some trim gel out and going over things like the door handles and the mirrors, and more importantly the bumpers, because they look awful. And at some point very soon I am going to be spraying all these things black, so that first of all they match, because at the moment some things are grey and some things are black, and so that the finish is consistent, because the finish on the bumpers is really poor. So that will come in a future video, but now let's get some trim gel out. Even though these bumpers have been painted black, the trim gel still gives them an extra depth and a wet look that hides all the marks and scratches. There's no point putting the effort into the paint only to have scruffy looking bumpers. They make a much bigger difference than you may think. But with that, we're done. Melody's finally looking respectable and she's a stunner. So thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, then please do click like and subscribe to TwinCam as well. I'm forever indebted to my wonderful Patreon supporters, so if you'd like to support me that way, then please do follow the link in the description, and I'll have more videos coming along soon.